Incoming, the 47th President of the United States arrived in the Swiss Alps, projecting power. Donald Trump says he loves Europe. He's also been using tariffs to coerce Europe's leaders to give him what he wants. A last glance at his notes, and he was on his way. America is the world's largest economy, Trump an irresistible force. The challenge is how to contain him.
It's great to be back in beautiful Davos, Switzerland, and to address so many respected business leaders, so many friends, few enemies.
Trump launched into a speech which lasted for more than an hour. He boasted of the strength of the US economy and the weakness of Europe's. He hit notes he's hit many times before. Climate change, a hoax. NATO, a waste of money. And then he turned to Greenland.
Big, beautiful piece of ice. It's hard to call it land. It's a big piece of ice.
Trump said America needs to own Greenland to protect itself and Europe from the threat posed by Russia and China. He said he wants to buy the territory, suggested the US was owed it, but appeared to rule out military action.
People thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it, as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
Mr. President, is Greenland the price NATO has to pay for your support, Mr. President?
Greenland's very important for national and international defense. Without it, you really can't have great international defense, so it's very important.
Denmark says Greenland's not for sale, Mr. President.
We'll see what happens.
That was a classic Trump speech, full of self-praise, combative, full of emotional charge, and pretty light on detail. The president repeatedly made the claim that America had given Greenland back to Denmark after the Second World War. That's a claim that's highly contested. How did you interpret that speech? Did you feel that was a more conciliatory tone, less warlike?
I think that I think it's a positive that he appeared to back down from his threat to use military force to against an ally to take Greenland. So that much at least was positive.
Can Europe relax now?
The rest of the speech, I would hate to be the fact checker.
Afterwards, the Secretary-General of NATO fact-checked the president in person, specifically Trump's claim that NATO has never come to America's defense.
And they did in Afghanistan, as you know, for every American who paid the ultimate, for every 2 Americans who paid the ultimate price, there was 1 soldier from another NATO country that did come back to his family. From the Netherlands, from Denmark, particularly for other countries. So you can be assured, absolutely, if ever US will be under attack, your allies will be with you.
That meeting proved significant.
Oh, it's a great deal for everybody.
1 hour later, Trump announced that what he called the framework of a future deal over Greenland had been struck with NATO.
Well, the deal is going to be put out pretty soon, and we'll see. It's right now a little bit in progress, but pretty far along. It gets us everything we needed to get.
It's official. President Trump has called a truce. His 4-day trade war with Europe appears to be over, and it's not really clear why. Joel Hills, News at 10 in Davos.
Well, James is at the European Council in Brussels tonight, where EU leaders were due to meet tomorrow to discuss how to respond to those tariffs. And James, I'm not sure whether the meeting's off or whether the agenda's hastily being rewritten. What are European leaders saying tonight, and what are you hearing about the details of this deal over Greenland?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously massive relief, but there's considerable bafflement too that this whole thing seems to have been sorted out by giving the Americans what it appears they could always have had anyway. I mean, the details are sparse. Even President Trump only called this the concept of a plan. We may learn more from a NATO press conference tomorrow, but it seems to involve much more NATO cooperation in the defence of Greenland and the Arctic in general, particularly those countries who already keep forces in the far north, plus some mineral rights in Greenland to the Americans, all of which the Danes and NATO had been saying to President Trump since this started, yes, you can have all that if you want it. You just have to ask. You've had troops there before, you can have it again. So the meeting here tomorrow, it seems, is going to go ahead. That was called to set up a robust response to any economic threat from Washington, a response that would obviously be economically damaging for everyone, but particularly for America. Whether that had anything to do with President Trump's decision-making, it's impossible to tell, but it will certainly encourage those here who have been saying, listen, the way to deal with Trump is to stand up to him. If you play patsy and give him what he wants, he simply comes back for more. But I think the depressing thing for these leaders is that all of this last few days has come about because of the caprice and the mood swings of one man. They've got 3 more years of that, and whether a battered NATO can survive much more than this is, well, who knows?
OK. James, from Brussels, thank you very much indeed. Dan's in Washington this evening. Let's go to Dan now and try and get his analysis too, because, Dan, it's kind of difficult to work out who's won, who's lost here, right? Donald Trump sounded pretty upbeat leaving that meeting with Mark Rutte earlier, but he had been saying at that speech around midday or lunchtime that Greenland was the one prize that America wanted. I don't understand what's happened at this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, this, on the surface of it, we need to get the details clearly, but, you know, this seems to be a long way short of getting the whole of Greenland. That certainly doesn't seem to be on the table. There's speculation and some reporting here that perhaps this may involve parcels of land that are given some sort of US sovereignty. Very unclear how this is going to work in detail. One kind of example of how this might work is Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which the Americans lease in perpetuity, so possibly something like that. But it's interesting, actually, in Greenland, people can't own land at all. The land is held commonly, so that's going to be a very difficult circle to square for the Danish government. But we've been speaking to one NATO military chief who has welcomed, on the surface of it, this apparent compromise.
It usually helps to treat the other partner with respect. That's not President Trump's style, but I think that a lot of people were not expecting it to be easy. And I think there'll be a lot of relief that it looks like this is going in the right direction. I think both sides have come out of this maybe a little wiser, and hopefully we'll come out of it with a much stronger presence in the Arctic and strengthen NATO security.
I wonder if some European leaders will be perhaps wise to look at The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's book, in which he talks about asking for everything and then settling for what you can get.
All right, Dan, from Washington, thank you very much. OK, let's round things off now by speaking to Robert, who's on the set of his Peston programme this evening, which is coming up after us. Evening to you, Robert. And look, the Prime Minister himself was insistent today at Prime Minister's questions he wasn't going to yield to the President's threats over Greenland. So how do you think tonight's news is going down in Downing Street?
Well, look, it's a mixture of relief, but some residual anxiety. Relief, obviously, that the 10% tariffs are not being imposed. But anxiety that, I mean, in the end, you know, the evidence is that Trump only backed down because he's in a part of the world, Davos World Economic Forum, where he's surrounded by money people. He saw how markets had reacted the previous day at this extraordinary standoff between America and most of Europe over the future of Greenland. Markets fell. They stabilised a bit today as hopes were sort of growing that there might be some kind of compromise, and he does. There's his phrase, taco, Trump always chickens out, and he does chickens out when, you know, there's a risk of the dollar and markets falling. That's essentially, those are the only things that appear to dictate to him. But what the Prime Minister has learned the hard way is that Donald Trump is a very, very unreliable ally, very unreliable friend, but an ally on which the UK is enormously dependent for our security, just to keep our nuclear weapons functioning. For example, we require American cooperation. We are intimately bound into their intelligence service. And so I think the lesson from all of this, and actually on my show, you can see this interview in a few minutes, I spoke to the former head of MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, Sir Alex Younger, and he says the lesson of all of this is we've just got to get a move on and, you know, wrest back some control over our security, get back some independence from America. And, you know, this is obviously patently true of the UK. It's arguably also true of the whole of Europe. Now, within the Labour Party, there is now really huge pressure on the Prime Minister to move much faster in terms of getting closer to the European Union, both commercially and militarily. And that pressure is only going to intensify after these astonishingly stressful few days.